when we were out on the second position under the Marines, I had the capability of supporting any of the infantry companies out there as well. And I can recall having just arrived, maybe the second day there, hearing a call from fire on the radio, and a forward observer screaming out, "They're 100 meters, and closing. Please fire. Somebody fire and support, and we'll give the coordinates." And I was under the Marine plan called Sabre Plane. If I would have to apply for permission to fire from the Marines, and they would clear the fire to allow me to go ahead and fire. And if there were a Marine jet in the air, they would say Sabre Plane denied, and wouldn't let me fire. And I can recall this very first time where I could hear the shooting, I could hear the screaming, I could hear the whole action, and the Marines were denying me to fire and support, and I felt so helpless, and we kept on trying to apply to fire, and then there was silence, and no more screaming, and no more anybody calling for help. And you don't really know what happened. You don't really know whether they lived, but you can only guess they probably did not. That happened again, second time. Somebody, once again, being overrun, an infantry unit out doing a reconnaissance and caught in a trap. And again, I applied to fire and was told Sabre Plane. And this time I said, the hell with it. They can court-martial me, but I'm going to go fire and support. I'm not going to let anybody die again. You learned after a while in Vietnam that you were there to support each other, and the rules were guidelines, but when it came to action, you knew better than anybody else what to do. And the last thing you wanted to do was not be able to live with yourself and the guys around you.
By 1969, 1970, the war had become so repugnant to the American people that our commanders were just flat told, we cannot tolerate American casualties. And yet we still have to have results for our presence. We had certain body count requirements where we were expected to kill so many of the enemy, and we had as a resource these B-52 Arclight attacks where scores of B-52 bombers with 500-pound bombs would be given a designated impact area on the ground where the ground forces, the U.S. forces, would say, the enemy is here, or their caves are here.
I would go into the tunnels with a .45 caliber pistol, a flashlight. I'd have a smoke grenade usually taped to my left ankle, and possibly a Bowie knife. And I would look around, see who's home, look for documents, look for weapons, try to see how big the tunnel complex is, try to get an idea of if it's been used, if it's not being used.
We used to recon by fire with arc lights, which was a very expensive way, but it was a very safe way to save American lives. And when you drop that much ordnance in an area where there are known enemy people, you're going to win every time.
The more I searched tunnels, the more I realized that, you don't dig this intensely and then just roll over and give up. I don't care what your political ideology was. The tunnels were being built long before supposedly the communists came along. I mean, they were fighting the French for a long time. They've been digging tunnels for a long time.
The thing that I didn't like was we were being asked to plot some of those targets in areas where I, as the intelligence specialist at the time, was pretty sure there wasn't any enemy out there. There were no friendlies out there. I don't even think there were any monkeys out there. But still, there were pressures to do things like that, which I didn't think was a very economical way of fighting the war. And yet the pressures on the people who asked me to do that were such, and I always had a clear conscience about the way I plotted those, because I knew that there was no good guy was going to be out there unless he was lost.
People from my generation who experienced, no matter on what side they were in the Vietnam War, if they were following their conscience, whether they were serving or not serving, and they were paying attention, I think that generation has gotten far more observant foreign policy, far more critical of government. We've turned into a generation, in many instances, of watchdogs. Say, wait a minute. You're going down the same path that led us into a position where we were demolishing the fiber of this country. I always thought, coming out of that World War II generation of children, that saw their parents coming back from the war and had those stories, that we were always the good guys, that we stood for, with the old Superman thing, truth, justice, and the American way. And after the Gulf of Tonkin, after the Pentagon Papers, and after so many of the things that happened, and we realized that the government had not been forthcoming, that in effect they had lied, that innocence, that sense of we are the champions, one thing and another, that was kind of tarnished and banged up a little bit. Maybe we were naive.